I am making an updated Earthbound Immortal deck profile. I'm mainly making this just because I realize it's been a while since my last video, and the Earthbound servants got a few rarity upgrades. There's one in particular that I'm actually upset didn't get a rarity upgrade. But I figured I'd go ahead and make a video on my current Earthbound deck and potentially get some input on it. So starting off with the monsters, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Prisoner Groundkeeper. Groundkeeper has the effect that if it's normal or special summoned, you can summon a level 5 or lower Earthbound monster from your deck or graveyard, except for another Groundskeeper. And then if there's a field spell in play, your Earthbound monsters can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. And then also if you use its effect, you cannot summon from the extra deck for this turn, except for fusion and synchro monsters, which you're going to notice that a lot, that you get locked into fusion and synchro a lot. And then next, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Prisoner Linewalker. Linewalker has the effect that when it's normal or special summoned, you can add either Earthbound Prison or Harmonic Synchro Fusion from your deck to your hand. Or from your deck or graveyard to your hand, I believe. Let's see. Yeah. And if you control a level 6 or higher Earthbound monster, you can banish this card from your graveyard, target a monster your opponent controls, and treat it as it was just summoned. Or not treat it as it was just summoned. You return to your opponent's extra deck, and your opponent summons a monster with the same name as that returned monster. That's only in there for Earthbound Servant Geokraken's effect, which I'll get to that later. And then if you use any of Linewalker's effects, you get locked into fusion and synchro monsters from the extra deck, I believe. Okay, never mind. Linewalker does not lock you at all. For some reason, I always thought it did. And then next, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Prisoner Stonesweeper. Earthbound Prisoner Stonesweeper is a free body while there's a field spell in play, and then you can also discard it to add a level 3 or lower Fiend Tuner from your deck to your hand. And then next, I play the 7 Earthbound Immortals. Earthbound Immortal Wiriko Charaska, Asilapiscu, Kokoraya, Kusulu, Chakuchalua, Kokopakapu, and Earthbound Immortal Uru. I'm only playing all 7 of them just because I really like them. You don't even have to play the Earthbound Immortals, or if you do want to play an Immortal, you can get away with just 1. But I personally prefer playing all 7 of them. And if you only want to play 1, then you can replace them with either hand traps, or I know some people are playing Garbage Ogre and Garbage Lord just for another level 5 dark synchro or level 5 dark monster. But all of them share the effect that if there's not a field spell in play, they self-destruct. There can only be 1 face-up Earthbound Immortal on the field. And then they cannot be targeted for attacks, but can attack your opponent directly. And then from there, they all have their own unique effects, where Wiriko Charaska lets you return cards on your field back to your deck to make your opponent discard an equal number of cards. And for each card discarded, it gains 1,000 attack. Kusulu has the effect where if it would be destroyed in battle, you contribute 1 other monster to then have your opponent's life points. Asilapiscu, if it would leave the field except by its own effect, destroys all special summon monsters your opponent controls, and inflicts 800 points of damage per monster destroyed. Kokoraya then has a similar effect where when it leaves the field except by its own effect, it just blows up the board. Chakuchalua actually has 2 effects. Woo. Where when Chakuchalua is in defense mode, your opponent just cannot enter their battle phase. And then once per turn, Chakuchalua can deal damage to your opponent equal to half its defense points. However, it cannot attack that turn. It uses that effect. Kokopakapoo, I think, has the worst effect of them all, where when Kokopakapoo destroys a monster in battle, your opponent takes damage equal to that monster's original attack points. It would have been a lot better if it was just, if it inflicts damage, you can destroy a monster your opponent controls, but oh well. And then Earthbound Immortal Uru has the effect where you contribute one monster you control to then take or one other monster you control to take control of an opponent's monster till the end of the turn. I will update the Earthbound Immortal lines once Earthbound Immortal, let's see, what was it? I believe it was Crimson King releases. I'm guessing it'll be in the next Maze set. So there will be 8 of them. But that is it for the monsters. Moving on to the spells. Like I said, if you don't want to play all the Earthbound Immortals, you can just play one of them. Or none of them, really. And just play Garbage Ogres, so you can search for Garbage Lord, which you can summon for free by paying 2,000 life points. And that's another level 5 Dark Monster. But what I really want for this deck is for there to be more Earthbound Prisoners, that like another level 1, 3, and then maybe 2 level 5s that are still free summons while there's a field spell. But moving on to spells, I play 1 copy of 1-for-1. This just lets you summon Groundskeeper. Or Groundkeeper. I don't know why I keep trying to call it Groundskeeper. 1 copy of Terraforming, since field spells do matter for this deck. Then I play 3 copies of Earthbound Fusion. Earthbound Fusion can only be activated during your main phase unless there is a card in the field zone. It just lets you fusion summon a Dark Fusion monster, and then if there is a fusion, or if there is a field spell in play, you can then banish this card from your graveyard to then summon an Earthbound monster from your hand or graveyard. However, you use that effect, you get locked into fusion and synchro monsters. Next, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Prison. Earthbound Prison has the effect that when it's activated, you can target one monster your opponent controls and negate its effects while Earthbound Prison's in play. And then Earthbound Prison also has the effect that during your main phase, you can have 1 additional normal summon of an Earthbound monster. And then lastly, if Earthbound Prison is destroyed or banished by an opponent's card effect, you can then negate all face-up cards your opponent currently controls and have their life points. I was actually playing a game that made me laugh where my opponent had activated Eradicator Epidemic Virus while I had 3 of these in my hand, and the destruction effect is not a once per turn effect at all. So they destroyed all 3 of them, but then they lost half their life points 3 times. So they activated Eradicator Epidemic Virus, but then I believe it was... yeah, they only had 1,000 life points left. And luckily for me, they already had a field spell in place, so I just... No, how did I do that? I don't remember how, but I was able to pull out an Earthbound Immortal and just punch. I remember now, it wasn't an Earthbound Immortal at all. It was just... I summoned Groundskeeper, made level 6 Synchro, entered battle phase, used level 6 Synchro's effect, made a fusion, and just started swinging. Anyway, for big consistency, I also play 3 copies of Allure Darkness. This lets you draw 2 cards and banish a dark monster from your hand, but if you can't banish a dark monster, then you discard your entire hand. And then because I am playing all 7 Earthbound Immortals, I am playing 3 copies of Tokusano Shinkyojin, also known as level 10 trade-in, as you send monsters from your hand or face-up field to the graveyard that's total levels equal 10 to draw 2 cards. As the only decks I've seen play this card are Earthbound, Time Lord, and Yubel. And then next, finally for the spells, I play 3 copies of Harmonic Synchro Fusion. Honestly, this can probably be a 1 or 2 of. It doesn't really have to be a 3, but I like having access to it so I don't have to search for it. Harmonic Synchro Fusion lets you send a tuner and non-tuner from your field to the graveyard, And then let's use Synchro Summon and Fusion Summon using just those two monsters. Where you summon a Synchro monster, or where you Synchro Summon a monster using just those two, and then Fusion Summon a monster using just those two. This card is part of the reason why you only the lock in this deck is Fusion and Synchro monsters. And you can only activate one Harmonic Synchro Fusion per turn. You can not summon from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. You cannot summon from the extra deck the turn you activate this card, except for Fusion Synchro monsters. You can only activate one per turn. I want to say there was another thing. Okay, no, there's not. Moving on to the traps, I play 2 copies of Earthbound Release. Earthbound Release can only be activated when your opponent special summons, or when a level 6 or higher monster is normal or special summoned to your opponent's field, where you then can tribute 1 level 10 or higher Earthbound monster. Let's see. You tribute a level 10 Earthbound monster, which destroys as many cards your opponent controls as possible, and if you do, inflict damage equal to your opponent equal to the combined original attack of those destroyed monsters. So this card is able to deal massive damage depending on who you're playing against. Like, I actually managed to win a game against Fiendsmith Snake Eye with this card, where they built up their board, but they didn't have any kind of trap negation. So the moment that they summoned, let's see, I think it was Snake Eye's Flamberge, the total attack on their field was more than 8,000, so I just used Earthbound Release. They couldn't stop it and just lost. And then lastly, I had 3 extra spots when I was building this deck. Originally it was going to be 3 copies of Earthbound Wave, which is a spell trap negation while I control an Earthbound Immortal. But I figured 3 copies of Eradicator Epidemic Virus would not only be better, but funnier. Eradicator Epidemic Virus can only be activated by tributing a dark monster with 2,500 or more attack. Most of the Earthbound Immortals fit that, as well as the extra deck monsters. But when it's activated, you declare spell or trap, you look at your opponent's hand, all their set spells and traps, and every card they draw until the end of their 3rd draw phase after its activation, and destroy all cards of the declared type. However, if your opponent searches for a spell card when this card's activated, if you call spell, or if they add a trap when you call trap, then any cards that they search won't be affected by this card at all. It only affects the cards that they draw. And that is it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck. For the extra deck, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Servant Geogremlin. Geogremlin has 2 effects where you can target once per turn. You can target one monster your opponent controls, and they can either destroy it or increase your life points by half of that monster's attack points. And then Geogremlin also has the quick effect during the battle phase to be able to fusion summon an Earthbound fusion monster by banishing materials from your hand, field, or graveyard. Or as I believe it's hand, field, or grave. It might just be field and grave. Let's see. Banishing materials from your hand, field, or graveyard. So yeah, that was correct. And you can only use each effect of Geogremlin once per turn. Next, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Servant Geogriffin. Geogriffin has the effect of just being a quick effect. Target an Earthbound monster other than Earthbound Servant Geogriffin in your graveyard and special summon it in defense position. And then if Geogriffin is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can activate its effect. Target one card your opponent controls, destroy it, and if you do, inflict 3... I forgot how much damage it is. 300 damage to your opponent for each Earthbound monster with a different name in your field and graveyard. So depending on how long the game's been going, it can be very little or it can be a lot. Next, for fusions, I play 3 copies of Geogremlina. Geogremlina has the effect that when it's fusion summoned, you can add... Or my bad, if it's special summoned, you can add an Earthbound monster from your deck to your hand. Geogramlina also has the effect that if a monster your opponent controls is destroyed by the effect of an Earthbound monster, you can then inflict damage to your opponent equal to that destroyed monster's original attack. As well as having the effect where once per turn, you can target a synchro monster you control and it can attack your opponent directly that turn. And you can only use each effect of Earthbound Servant Geogramlina once per turn. Next, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Servant Geokraken. Geokraken has the effect that when it's special summoned, you can add a field spell from your deck to your hand. And then, let's see, remember it does more than the effect I'm thinking of. The monster special summoned from your opponent's extra deck, except in a damage step, destroys many monsters your opponent controls as possible that were special summoned this turn. If you did inflict 800 damage for each monster destroyed, and you can only use each effect of Earthbound Servant Geokraken once per turn. And then lastly, I played the big boss monster of the Earthbound Servants. 3 copies of Earthbound Servant Geogratia. Geogratia has the effect that it has to be fusion summoned at the start of the damage step. If it battles another monster, you can activate its effect to reduce that opposing monster's attack points to 0. I forget exactly how this next effect works. And then, if a monster's your opponent in your opponent's possession is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can destroy all cards your opponent controls. You can only use this effect of Earthbound Servant Geogratia once per turn. And this face-up card in its owner's control leaves the field because an opponent's card special summon an Earthbound monster from your deck or extra deck, which basically lets you summon any Earthbound monster except for itself, since it itself has to be fusion summoned. But that is it for my Earthbound Immortal deck profile. If you have any ideas what I can do to improve the deck, any ideas for deck sexes you've made in the future, or deck sexes see face each other, I'm currently working on Earthbound versus Stardust Dragon and Earthbound versus Red Dragon Archfiend. But if you have any ideas, comment below. I always read the comments. Thank you for watching.